Alright, long time no see, guys, but welcome back and to a new location, the Wells Fiberglass Shop. That is right, we are no longer in the garage. We are professional and with some new tricks up our sleeve, too. But before we get into all that, let's talk about this project that you're looking at in the background. So, essentially, what we're building is a jig for the radar pod, and you can see how close it is on this hardtop. But this jig is going on a 44 contender, and it's the biggest hardtop that we've had to date. So the owner of this 44 contender, which is brand new, it'll be coming from the factory to my metal guy, or to a metal guy which we work with. The owner wanted a Marlin tower, which is as you can see, it's got the upper station with controls. That is the Marlin tower, and it lets the captain get a better angle of what's going on with the bait spread, and also you can spot fish way easier when you're not trying to look at the horizon. So why are we building this massive radar pod, which is almost 3 foot wide by 6 foot long? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, we want to be a custom fiberglass hardtop builder for big boats, and to have that, you got to have standout accessories, and I think this, by the end of the video, you'll see it as a standout accessory. This particular pod was designed in collaboration with one of the aluminum guys who formerly worked at Palm Beach Tower as a head welder. Palm Beach Towers is essentially the big boys in this business. If you have a Palm Beach Tower on your boat, you are going to get more money for the boat when you go and sell it. It's just how it is. They are the upper echelon of towers in this business, and our aluminum guy essentially was a head welder there and did all the custom boats for 10 plus years. So he wanted a look that was familiar with the design of a lot of these sport fish, and we wanted to add our own touches. Obviously, we don't want to just go and copy someone else's design. You can see it's a familiar design, but it looks more different. More different. It looks like a gator head essentially, and nobody else is looking like that. And so, first thing, I gotta say a huge shout out to my dad on this one. This project would not even be possible without him. His CAD drawing and rendering, we wouldn't have won the job without it. He's going to be a wizard on there. So, essentially how this process goes is he designs everything in a 3D space that is essentially all the dimensions that you will need to build any part of the thing that he designed. So for this tower, he sent the whole measurements over to the tower, or the aluminum guy. The aluminum guy can then measure off at how far the pipe needs to be apart from each other to the ground, all that, and you can double check it with my dad's drawings. But so what you're seeing in the background is our CNC. The CNC is one of the new tools that is a trick up our sleeves. It turns what would be days of cutting with a jigsaw into about a 30-minute job. It's nothing short of incredible. It's a recent pickup for us, and we haven't really utilized it yet. We're no means masters at it. We're learning it with each part that we cut. I think that's the same as anything, including fiberglass. You learn every time you do something on it. But if you have any tricks for it, please feel free to hit us up, because we're always interested to know how to make this thing run better. But that being said, we did completely rewire this machine. We being my dad mostly. He is the engineer behind this. He is the one that can follow the wire diagrams, over 250 wires, and somehow this thing fired up on the first try with only one minor error, and he fixed it like that. So, I mean, we know this thing inside and out. It's a beast. Now, it's a 12 foot by 4 foot table. That's a vacuum table with a 12 horsepower vacuum and a 12 horsepower spindle, and then we added on new Yaskawa drives with an oak board. And I know to some of you that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean much to me either. It just means that it can cut through pretty much anything. So I would like to admit a flaw in this whole thing, and This video is not going to turn out the way that I quite wanted it to, but it gives you a good idea of how to do it. The jig on this one, essentially, we should not have done a jig. Our original plan was to do this jig, which is all the ribs, essentially. You'll see all the wood pieces that get lined up, and the plan there is to do it like a boat or a console. We've done it for consoles in the past. We've done it for seating. We'll do it for seating again. We like jigs. We like our jigs. Our plan on it was to drape over an 1/8" sheet of Divinycell, and this Divinycell is essentially foam core that is so flimsy that it's not really core. It just drapes itself over with minor kinks in it, and then you have to cut the kinks out and then try to make a perfect shape with a knife. And I heard this idea that we end up doing in the video from one of our boat builder friends, that his whole MO is to do the quickest, easiest way to get a production mold, which essentially I wasn't sure about a production mold on this part right off the bat, but it's what we're ending up doing, and I do like the shape of it, so I'm happy we are doing it. But the easiest way would have been to get foam blocks, cut them on the CNC, and then have them essentially perfect, and then lay some glass up on it, or just put Duratec on it, or gel coat, and then pull a part off of that, and you have your mold. The reason we didn't do this is those blocks of foam cost $900, and when you see $900 straight up, you think, oh, I can do it for cheaper than that. Well, on this one, I don't think we did it cheaper than that. And I mean, that's just kind of a rule of thumb, is if you can have a machine do a majority of the work, you should probably have the machine do the majority of the work, even if the materials is more expensive, or the material is more expensive. But I just want to get ahead of that, because I know people in the comments are going to be there's going to be someone in the comments that thinks it's I got you, I'm a better mold builder than you. I don't claim to be the best mold builder ever, but whatever. But yeah, you can see the CNC running in the background. Essentially, this coating, I think we end up, I don't know how many lines we ended up on this one, but every line that you see go by on there is essentially telling the spindle to move to a certain coordinate on the table, and that's how it cuts it out. So, and then I gotta move quick here because the jig right there is not put together, it's soft put together. The pieces didn't come off perfectly, but essentially what we did is just sand them a little bit. It's MDF. We used 1/4" MDF on all the ribs, and actually it was 1/2" MDF, and then on the middle section, on the middle backbone, essentially, we used 1/4" MDF, and should have used thicker because, as you can see, it broke, but it's pretty good. And this, we're gluing it all together, and we get to see the first shape of it and how it's really going to look. But one thing that I can say that we really didn't like, or I didn't like, my dad was fine with it, the tower guy did not like it as well, so I sided with him on this one. The front is going to be used for a FLIR mount, and a FLIR is a forward-looking infrared, I forget what the R stands for in FLIR, and I probably got the first 3 wrong, but it's essentially an infrared camera that lets you see at night, and when it's dark, it's pretty nice for running at night. It runs right into your Garmin's, and this boat has two 24-inch Garmin's down low, so it'll be essentially like looking at where you're going on a big screen. But it's just one of those things where all these boats, you have to have the FLIR, a big radar, and what this pod, the reason it's so wide actually, was it was designed so that when you're downstairs at the helm, you would look up and you would have 2, I believe it was 8-inch Garmin's or 12-inch Garmin's, but it'd have dual Garmin's up top, so you'd have your radar there. And this has dual seating, so it's got the 2 rows of seating and then a back seat, I believe. And so you could have your gauges on the left one so that the people in the back seat can see it, and that's why I really enjoy doing what I do. I get to work with people that have these crazy ideas like that, and owners that have these crazy ideas like that, and it's like, yeah, you know what, I could see myself putting that on my boat if I can afford to. It's just crazy. They didn't end up going with that option, which honestly is better for us because we'd essentially have to cut into the hard top from the bottom and then glass two pieces, and it's just easier the way that it is. It's essentially a flat top with a couple light pods on it, but you can see us doing here, we're trying to get it where it's perfectly in place, as opposed to having that middle or that middle backbone kind of stick up a little bit, or having a rib stick up. So this, I mean, we're really getting the sense of how big it is right here, and we're trying to figure out how we're gonna do it. But that's kind of the whole thing about why I continued to make this video, even though I switched up how we did it, and people might not like that we switched it up, or might not like that we did it the way that we did it, which it's kind of just how all fiberglass goes. Everyone has their own opinion on how to do something and how to make it the best way, air quoting, the best. If you don't do it one guy's way, he's going to walk away and say, that he didn't do that right. When realistically, it's like life. You can go 30 different routes and end up at the same spot as someone else. So, I don't know. That's just my take on it. That's kind of how our whole business started, is these hatches, and it's people that don't like the way that their boats are designed, and they want to put in these hatches that essentially give them more storage and an empty space that the manufacturers just didn't use. So, and worst case scenario, you can always pull out a grinder. That's my take on it. If you mess something up, there's always a grinder. You can always fix it. So, but going back to it, the Venture and the Stretch, really. Unfortunately, ever since this shop has opened up, the work on them have just kind of stopped. Well, the Venture, unfortunately, hasn't been touched since before COVID, because I got a boat that essentially launched Wells Fiberglass to where it's gone now. It essentially showed me that you could make money off of doing this, and realistically, I did not make enough money on what I did for the guy. It was one of my dad's friends. I redid an aqua sport, and I did a whole deck for $8,000, and I installed the deck and ground the old deck, and it was a terrible idea, to be honest. It got me to where I was. It put me in contact with my landlord now, but it was just, but it showed me that I could make money on it, so I'm glad I did it. But that was literally March of 2020. The last video I posted of the Venture was probably February of 2020. So March, and then, that whole virus thing happened, and into May is when I finished that boat. Then we worked on the Stretch quite a bit, and the hatch business took off because everybody wanted a boat. And between fairing out the bottom of the Stretch, and the hatch business, I haven't had time. Life comes at you, and realistically, I'll always preach it. You should always use your boat over work on it. If you don't have a boat that runs, don't tear it apart. If it runs well, please, if your fuel tank's got water in it or something like that, rip the thing up. But nothing beats time on the water with friends and family, and I am the strongest advocate of that. I will always go, and I quote, product test, which is just taking my boat out and going fishing or going to the sandbar. You gotta do it. Alright, so the game plan here is to fill this whole thing with this polyurethane foam, and then we'll sand it, fill it, and then pull a mold off of it. Should work pretty well. Just is a matter of getting the polyurethane to the point where it's not doing too much of this. So to finish off my thought there before I was rudely interrupted is use your boat. Enjoy it with your family and friends. It's worth it. And let me go back on something here. I am not doing this type of video I'm not trying to get it to the views. I'm posting it because this is what I do. There's not much of the boat building content out there that's really people building boats. There's people that redo sailboats and stuff, but they're mostly doing the interior, and then they smack like Sherwin-Williams paint on the like deck of the boat. That's not what we do. What boat building is to me is taking a blank canvas essentially and an old hull or a new hull that you want to alter and make it the perfect boat for what you want to do. And there's not a lot of that on YouTube right now. And I don't want to say that I want to start a movement of doing it, but everyone thinks that boating is a rich man's game, which, look, right now with the engine prices and electronic prices and fuel prices, it is a rich man's game. It's not a poor man's game, I'll say that, but you can build a badass little skiff for not a lot of money. Not a lot of money for a boat, I should say. Realistically, there's plans out there that can get you a brand new skiff that you work on, you do all the work on, for about 10 grand. Which, if you want to get on the water, that is your way to get out on the water. It's not a production boat that everyone else has. It is a piece that you can be proud of. And that's, I guess that circles back to what I'm saying about the other people. It's something that they are proud of, but I wanted to kind of put out the more technical side of the fiberglass and how to do stuff and how to make stuff like this. I mean, not everybody knows how to do this by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not saying that everyone can, because this requires a lot of technical skills, especially if you want to get into the precision that we're doing with CAD and all that, and essentially having a symmetric part on both sides. So that's why I want to do it. And I also want to apologize right here because I didn't get to film much. I got pulled off to do my heart and top mold, which is finished now, but was getting worked on for 6 weeks in the middle of this whole project. And my sanding guy, thank God, he is a lifesaver. He comes in and pretty much can hop on any project in the shop and do it. So he got on there and he started doing the filling, so I didn't even get a full shot of it completely fair before he started filling it. So I'm sorry about that, but that's just how it goes. And if you guys need to know how to fill and fair, I can make a video on how to do that, because that is one thing that I can tell you I am better than the average person at chasing those low spots. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this type of stuff where we're building these different projects, and I'll obviously finish out this one and show you the finished part on the top and all that, but please let me know. I love doing what I do. Being able to build stuff like that it's just the coolest thing to me. The fact that I get to call it a job, it's often surreal. I ruin it because I work 7 days a week and then I get sick of it, but it's how it goes when you start your own business. I still enjoy, I'd say 75 to 85% of the time, which is way more than the average career. So I'm blessed. Again, this is just kind of something I want to do on the side unless it takes off. If you guys really want to see what's going on in the shop all the time, I can obviously do that. And this is where we're at right now, is we're starting to fill this front part on and make it flat so that it can have a flare on there. So that's how we did it. We put the screw and then a flat stock that was the shape of it, and cut that flat stock to the shape of it, obviously, after we did it with cardboard, and filled up to that. So I appreciate you guys. Subscribe if you want more. Leave a like, all that good stuff. Comment. Have a good day.